don't go up. Don't ruin this. I just want to introduce you also to Janet, my artist who came with me, who did this lion. Where's Janet? Are you in the room or did you go clean your supplies? You're there. This is Janet Hune. Janet, just wave really big at everybody. Janet is awesome, part of our team in Los Angeles. She leads our fine arts team. We have over a dozen artists or so who paint during our services and meetings. And she's obviously finally trained and also trains a lot of people. But she makes me sick because she can do that in 45 minutes or less. And I'm an artist too, but not like her. We all just go, we kind of have idolatry towards Janet a little bit because she's so good. But she has a whole table worth of stuff outside. And I'm going to encourage you, take prophetic art into your homes. What we're seeing is that in hospitals and courthouses and things like that, we're connected with Bethel and Redding, Teresa Dedman, her art team also. And when arts that has healing anointing or prophetic anointing or intimacy with God on it, it comes from the artist's nature, which if it's God's nature, it carries the atmosphere of the artist. So when you bring it into your house, instead of just having nice landscapes, bring something that actually roars over you. You know, bring something that speaks over you. And if you're giving gifts away or whatever, I just want to encourage you to go into a season of giving gifts that are meaningful spiritually to impart something to somebody, even if they don't understand you're doing it. And so I bought lots and lots of art for people through the years because I think it speaks volumes. So I just wanted to encourage you about Janet's art. And then I also have a resource table. I'm going to give 2 things away real fast. I'm a little jet lagged. I'm a little in grief, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. And then I'm totally in the atmosphere that this team brought. That was just awesome. I'm just so, your granddaughter. I mean, are you serious? Or the 2 of them. That was incredible. Like your daughter, your granddaughter, intergenerational team right here. Okay, so this is my bestseller book. Sold a couple 100,000 copies of this because the message about God's about to release the greatest resources known to man, like in the day of Solomon, to build his temple. But we're his temple. And so he's going to release, if there's going to be 1 billion souls saved in one generation, there's going to be money that's going to fund that. And so this isn't about prosperity message. This is about the Father saying, I'm laying aside resources so that Jesus can get his full reward. And that reward is going to take venues and businesses and vehicles and all kinds of things, internet technologies, new technologies of all sorts, and we can lay hold of those things in the Spirit. So this book is all about that. If you're starting a business, is anybody starting a business and you're believing that you're going to make a lot of money? Anybody? This young man right here, I'm going to give this to you. When I shook your hand, I felt that for you, so that's good. Okay. The rest of you, I shook your hands too, and I believe for you too, don't worry. They're all like, what about me? The Throne Room Company, this is all about identity. I grew up in the church, and I never left the Lord or had a weird falling away period. I've just loved God all my life, but I did have to get regrounded in my identity not being in the works because the modern day Christianity, we do say what you do is who you are. And so this book takes you on a journey to where you're unshackled from religious identity, and you can come to a place where you really have a deep encounter with the Lord. And so I even talk about one of my throne room encounters. I talk about just intimacy with God. I did a study for over 2 years on all the people in history who had a deep encounter for the sake of intimacy, not for revival, although that came out of many of them, not for anything else, but just to know God the way he wants to be known. The John 17 prayer when Jesus prayed in the garden and said, Father, I want them to be with me where I am. And so this is going to unshackle you from any identity issues you have. You may not even know you have them. You'll start going, oh my gosh, I had identity issues. And it's short. It's my wife's favorite book she ever read before we even knew each other. So that says something. That's a good thing. Then she chased me around the world to marry me. Oh, I'm just kidding. So who is on an identity journey that you want another installment? This is the drummer, the second drummer right here. So I don't want to throw it because I'm not a good aim. I'm actually very athletic, but I'm afraid I'm going to kill somebody. So that's the whole advertisement. I'm from Los Angeles. We're allowed to do commercials there, so that's what that's all about. Some of you are like, I thought this was a prophetic apostolic conference. Why are they doing commercials? Because I'm from Hollywood. How many of you have never heard of mine or Jeremy's ministry before? Oh my gosh, like more than half the room. You are so brave to spend Wednesday night with us. This is like your tester night to see if we have anything. This is like the night where you come out and you go, let's go, it's snowing out. You know, there's no good TV on, let's go see John. No, I'm just kidding. But we're going to have a really good time together, and we're both carrying something right now that we've both never carried before. We do a lot together, but we do a lot apart from each other. We inspire each other, and we're really good friends. His wife and my wife also, they both move in ministry. and they happen to not come on this trip. Usually they come with us to places, but they happen to not come on this trip. I don't even remember why, but they're not here. And I know why my wife's not here, because she's getting over jet lag too from Korea. We just brought our 10-month-old baby to Korea. She had a blast. She had so much fun. And it was my wife's first major international trip with the baby. So pray for her right now, because she got home and my daughter's like, what? Midnight? It's time to wake up, you know? And both of us were taking care of her, but now she's alone. So just pray for my wife while I'm here. And then I'm leaving you a little early because one of our spiritual fathers passed away. And if this is your first time hearing it, Bob Jones, the prophet, passed away last Friday on Valentine's Day. And so it was really hard for both Jeremy and I were intimately acquainted with Bob and his wife, Bonnie. And I've been doing life for about 10 years with Bob. I was his official interpreter, one of the 7 guys who would have to travel with him because he's so hard to understand at times. So I'd have to travel with him and try and fix what he said when it was inappropriate. And because there's times that he would say things from being from Arkansas that he just needed help with. And I never really understood what he was saying anyways, but I would pretend and I just say the best thing I knew. He'd be like, there's 3 geese and they're honking over you right now. I'd be like, that means lots of good things are going to happen in this season. I mean, you know, I didn't understand. But I traveled around the world, or mostly around America, but around the world with him. And then I also just spent a lot of time with him when his first wife passed away. And we became like family. And so he passed away on Friday. But I'm actually really excited for him because I know what his life meant, what his life, even his passing, means for us. Because every time one of the great ones pass, we all come up. And if you don't know who this man is, it's okay. He did not found Bob Jones University. It's not the same one. This is a prophetic general who was unknown to a lot of the body of Christ, but the ones who did know him, he was one of their favorites. And so I have to leave on Friday morning to actually, in the middle of the night, Thursday, to go and just be a part of that. And Jeremy's going to stay with you on Friday. Even though he was this close to Bob, he's going to fly out on Saturday morning where we have the second part of the funeral memorial service. So I'm doing good. I'm actually really happy, even though I have a little grief on me. I'm really happy, and I'm really happy and in gratitude for what Bob brought me. So I'm in a good mood. So you don't have to worry. I'm not going to start crying. Well, maybe. No, I don't cry. I'm not James Gall, who was here with you last year or the year before. James is like bipolar emotionally on the stage sometimes. Like all of a sudden, he's like, isn't it great? Oh, and he's like, you know, we love James. I say that with respect. I absolutely love him. So I lived in Kansas City. That's where I was launched with Mike Bickle. Before it was a house of prayer. There was a mega church, and it was a lot of fun church, lots of war stories and good stories and all kinds of things. And I was there for 12 years, so that's a long time. I moved from California to be a part of Kansas City. And I was actually going into the entertainment industry. I'm just giving you a little foundation because I have 4 sessions with you. I was going into the entertainment industry. I had a scholarship for college for musical arts and musical theater. And I gave up that scholarship to go be with Mike Bickle, and I didn't even know who he was. Like, I'd seen him one time at a conference, but we had all these weird prophetic things happen to where the direction looked like it was going there. And I had to give up my scholarship. They wouldn't put it on hold for me. So it was like, it was dire for me to go there if it wasn't God. I was like going, God, are you serious? You want me to move to Kansas City? It snows there. You know, like, I'm from Southern California. It doesn't snow. You guys are like, you know, you have to realize, some of our friends, one of the girls in my church goes, I went to a place in the Midwest where you had to scrape ice off the cars. Can you believe people live like that? That's how naive Southern California is. You guys are like, it was 40 below last week, but it's different. So when I moved out to Kansas City and I was a part of the prophetic, I was never planning to be an apostolic prophetic guy. I always pursued God. I love ministry. I grew up in a family. My dad's a colonel. My mom was always doing some sort of ministry. We always were involved with home groups and of different types and whatever. And we were part of a lot of different types of churches. We helped birth the Vineyard. Then we went on to a Baptist church, funny enough, but it had revival in it. We just kept going. And every church experience I had when I was growing up had some measure of revival activity, which is really exciting. And so I saw a lot of healing and a lot of salvations. Before I was 15 years old, I had witnessed thousands of people get saved through the different churches we're involved with. As a matter of fact, my whole high school got saved my freshman year, a secular high school of over 750 people. Maybe a few were counting, maybe we're exaggerating by 10, you know, but I mean, like, the whole high school came to Christ. And it was a phenomenon. And by the time I went to Mike Bickle's place in Kansas City, they weren't an evangelistic church. They were more of a church that fueled other churches. So I got really lonely. I was like, oh my gosh, there's no unsaved people here. No one's friends with anybody outside this church. It's very church-centric. And then everybody really exalted the prophetic. Not necessarily Mike, it wasn't his culture, but it was just what happened. You got there and it was like the Kansas City prophetic movement. For those of you who aren't familiar, thank God that you weren't familiar with that part of it because it was kind of weird. But I was prayed for and released as one of those people, and before I even understood what it was. And so it's weird to ordain someone at 22 years old to be a prophet when they don't want to be. But I enjoy the prophetic. I enjoy hearing from God. He's always been my friend. My best prophetic ministry has been to myself my whole life. I just love walking with God. I love the Word and the Spirit coming alive inside of me. And so as I was growing up, in Kansas City, I realized that I have a Reformation calling on my life for the church, but I didn't know that until I was around all kinds of things that aren't like me. And instead of complaining and being like, this is terrible, I hate this, I didn't do that. I just was like, we can change this. In my generation, we can change this. And so after many years, I'll tell the story tomorrow night about some Bob Jones stories, because not just because he passed away, but because I had it in my heart to tell you some stories about this man and some of the things that happened with me and him. So I'll tell you tomorrow afternoon or night about those things. But when I decided to move to Los Angeles, it was very controversial because a lot of the prophetic people who I'm connected to told me it was going to fall into the ocean, and that there was no use in me going because God was judging the whole state of LA or the whole state of California or something. And but they don't realize that I don't live a church-centric life. So for me, I go like to the worst war zones, and I've gone to refugee camps, and last year when the Somalia crisis was going on, we provided 2 million meals by hand delivering them. I mean, I'm not afraid of scary places. Like we have teams in Congo in the war zone. We go to red light districts, to brothels. So I love running to danger and seeing God move. Like I'm not the kind of guy who's like, I love conferences with all my heart and this is my life. I would die if my life was conferences. Conferences, I get to give you reports and activate you. And when I'm seeing God do in radical ways in the entertainment industry and in the poor, if conferences were my life, I'm not saying it's wrong for someone else to have a teaching ministry. I don't have a teaching ministry, I have an equipping ministry. And so I'm not the most awesome teacher unless I'm teaching one of my little subjects I've studied for years. But what my heart is to do is to activate you and just to provoke you to a place of hunger that your faith will do something that has such a tangible transformation effort in your lifetime. And so for me, when I was in Kansas City, I learned a lot about what I didn't want to become, but I also gained so much from the atmosphere that was there on intimacy. So when I moved to Los Angeles and everybody was like, Shawn, don't move there, I had to tell them, like, I have to listen to God for myself, but like, I have to reject your words, but I'm not rejecting you. I absolutely love you. And Bill Johnson heard that I was moving there. And he's like, I will cover this. This is amazing. I can't wait till you go. Like he was in California, so he was so anti-California words. So when I got to Los Angeles, I was so excited because, I don't know if you know this, but all of the last 100 years of revival activity that's happened on the whole earth either started in California or else it had a greater birthing after it went there at some point. So I moved there, and it's like this group of hungry revival people. It was crazy. The other thing is that I think it's like 1/3 of the Jewish population on the earth lives in California. Some crazy amount of numbers. It's the second biggest Jewish community in the world. I mean, it's like little Israel. Like our offices for years were in Beverly Hills, around East Beverly Hills, which is kind of ghetto. But you didn't know there's a ghetto part of Beverly Hills, but there is. And it's this Jewish area community that's just crazy. It's like you feel like you're in Israel, And there's so many people groups there, and there's so much redemptive church activity happening in there. And California, for many years, gave more to the poor than all the other states put together up until about 1997. And now they're still giving more than 1/3 of the nation, because now the nation's got on board with giving to the poor. And we're talking about the poor in different nations. And so I'm like going, why does everybody think God's going to judge this? And it's because we've not understood the entertainment industry, and so we've cursed it. And I mean, really, that's why people think California is evil, is because all this pollution is coming out in the airwaves. But it's because we haven't occupied the airwaves. We haven't cared about defining what love looks like to this generation other than Christian love and love to God. But you can't define love to God unless you define love to each other. The divorce rate's the same in the church. Suicide rate's the same in the church. Alcoholism rate's the same in the church. And that's all because we've advocated our position to define love and to pastor love in this generation. So one of the things that we went out there to do is like say, God, can we pastor the people who are supposed to create the culture of love through the popular culture mediums? And so we've been doing that now for 8 years. I've started a coalition of entertainment ministries, and it's called Industry Alliance. It's a lot of fun. We've done a couple of events together. One of the events that I love the most, and this is just all foundation for who I am and what we're doing. One of the events I love the most was about a year and a half ago. It was called The Cry Hollywood. Faitine Grzeski put it on. She has an organization out of Canada. And we got together at Universal Studios at the Gibson Amphitheater, which is being torn down right now. So we're one of the last big events besides Jesus Culture there, which is fun for the church. But we rented out the Gibson Amphitheater on the Universal property, and we invited Christians in the entertainment industry to come for a 12-hour day of consecration to celebrate what God is doing in the entertainment industry. And we asked the spiritual fathers and mothers of the entertainment industry to come as the first thing that we did and bless what God is doing in Hollywood. So we had Pat Boone and Diane Cannon and all these major leaders that some of you would never know because they're like producers, directors that you wouldn't know their names, Howard Costanza and different people. But it was so amazing. They came and they blessed what God's doing in Hollywood, and they asked God to raise up even more. This is before this year of biblical movies has come. This is before it was all even in the planning, about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Then we had people who have children in the entertainment industry who are either losing their way or doing good, either one. We had like Katy Perry's parents, and we had Patty Malay, Justin Bieber's mom, and different people come, and they bless what God's doing in the entertainment industry through children, and they ask God for their children back. They ask God for their children to walk in their full purpose. And we made a covenant with God to pastor and steward the youth and the children of the Hollywood industry. And it was just amazing. Like the whole day was crazy awesome, and God TV aired it, and Daystar aired it, and TBN aired it, and probably close to 2 or 3 million people watched it worldwide, if not more, because some aired it over and over and over. And I just think, like, how cool is that? It was the first effort done on this level where we asked the church of the world to not look at what's not happening in the entertainment industry, but to bless what God is doing in the entertainment industry. The coolest part of it was that all the directors and actors and producers and musicians and the people who came to the event, they've never been to an event like it. They've never been honored. They're always like fighting against the church's perception that everything's evil in Hollywood. And so they were completely honored. We had major church leaders come and say, we bless you in your role as a missionary. We bless you for what you're pursuing. We bless you to be a voice this generation. And they felt so honored. And it changed and brought a culture of honor to what God's doing, so much so that so many of those people got reinvigorated and realigned for their calling. It was just beautiful. And so we're seeing fruit from it now. This is called the Year of Biblical Movies. There's about $750 million going into film and television projects towards Christian efforts right now that will come out in the next 3 years. That's the most in history, and it's happening in 3 years. How cool. So that's the kind of stuff we're laboring into. And whenever you think of, what is God doing in Hollywood, just pray for the Christians that are there. Pray for us if you don't know who to pray for. We have tons of especially young people who are actors and writers in the entertainment industry in our church, and just pray. Just ask God. You could watch our podcast or live streaming. We're on live stream. And for our services, we do a lot of regional stuff. We do regional events, and it's just a lot of fun. So it's one of those things that, like, I'm living the dream of what was in my heart because I get to do the ministry, but I get to do it towards the industry that I felt most called to. Last thing I'll say about it is that I always call our church a recovery center for pastors' kids. We've had over 78 pastors' kids spend a year to 3 years with us. As a matter of fact, we have about 40 of them in our church right now. And these are pastors' kids like that feel the same calling as their parents for ministry, but they feel it towards the entertainment industry. And so this is like Heidi Baker's kids, James Gall's kids, Cindy Jacobs' kids. Like, so many people's kids have either stayed with Lance Wallnau's son for a long time was in our church. So many of these people's kids spent time in LA because they're pursuing their entertainment calling or their business entertainment calling. And they came to us and they detoxed something and they entered into something greater. My heart was the same feeling we got as ministers when people laid hands on us and said, go do it. That these guys would get it for the entertainment industry because they have the same passion that we had to go into ministry. And so we've been praying and just kind of helping. We've also had a lot of healthy pastors' kids too. It's not like all unhealthy pastors' kids. But there's something about it. So we call ourselves the support group for pastors' kids, which is super weird, but it's just the next generation's coming to Hollywood. There's so many of the next generation pastors' kids that are there with us. I'm shocked all the time. I found out this week that 7 more of our people are pastors' kids that didn't tell me. I found out one at a time. I'm like, you're a pastor's kid? Yeah, my parents are pastors in Michigan. Oh my gosh, like we had no idea, but it's like Hollywood, something's happening right now with the next generation of the church is coming to Hollywood. It's just so cool. So it's just good for you to know because it's just interesting information. So I have a prophetic message for you, and I had an encounter for only about 10 minutes in my hotel room. And I've been in a unique season that I'm going to tell you about in a few minutes. But I'm going to start out just giving you just kind of a message that's in my heart right now that you would see, because one of the main mandates of my life is to help people to see how to see. And a lot of us don't always feel prophetic, or we don't know how to like instantly activate a visionary realm inside of our lives, or we're trying to have something, but it doesn't seem like it's connecting. And how many of you have, pursued the prophetic and every once in a while going, I wish I could have more, like you have something, but you wish you could have more, right? I want more, right? And so like one of the callings that Jeremy and I have is to activate you into understanding how to get more. And the incentive is really easy. It's love. The incentive isn't more gifting, or it's not more impartation. It's not revival. It's really easy. It's love. And I want to just share with you, this came out of a place of revelation where I was asking God for more. And I was asking, I was kind of in that striving season because everybody was doing open heavens conferences, including me. And I was like going, God, I just want to see heaven. I want to see heaven more. I want to see heaven, And I was praying this prayer. It's a historical prayer throughout all Christianity since the early days, since Stephen, or people saw Stephen go to heaven and they saw him. Well, first he said, I see Jesus seated at the right hand. And so he was seeing into heaven, which provoked jealousy. And early in the days of Christianity, people would ask for God, like out of Isaiah 65, they'd say, God, open the heavens, come down. And it was one of the common prayers because people wanted to see Jesus where he is. And they constantly were praying that. Well, I was praying that one day and I was going, God, I want to see heaven. And he said, stop striving. I want it more than you do. And I put it in your heart. And I'm like, oh. Then you want heaven and you want me to see heaven, so open my eyes. Like I'm still praying with striving. And he really put in my heart, like, what do you want to see when you see heaven? And I said, I want to see Jesus. And he said, well, what do you want to see Jesus for? Father's asking me this. And I'm like, because he's the most amazing person that ever was, He said, well, you can see Jesus better if you look on earth right now. He was refocusing my eyes. And so I began to pray, and I saw Revelation, the book of Revelation, the Revelation of Revelations. And before it's an eschatology book, it's a love letter. In Revelation 1, you have to realize John, the best friend of Jesus, was brought to heaven after he'd been boiled in oil, after he'd been stoned, all these attempts of martyrdom. Now he's on the prison aisle. It's kind of a labor colony, but it's also the place where political prisoners go. So it's actually beautiful also. And if you ever go to Patmos, I love it. It's one of the most beautiful places you can go to. So it's sort of resortish for a prison, in those days. Obviously, the conditions were much different, but it was nice. So they were fed a couple times a day, good food. And so he was a political prisoner because people cared for him. And it was only a place where political prisoners went. So he went in that place where he didn't have to fight against the Gnostics, which is the false religion where people didn't believe Jesus was resurrected. John was fighting for that his whole lifetime. More than anything else, he was trying to fight to prove to people that Jesus really did raise from the dead so that they can understand the power of that. And finally, we don't know if it's in his 80s or 90s or how old he was, but he's sent to this prison island where I think he was like in glory because he didn't have the politics of the church anymore. The worst had been done to him. I mean, now he's like sitting in a beautiful ocean view, getting 2 or 3 meals a day. Didn't even have to really work. I mean, as far as the political understanding of that historical island, he was he was able to write the letter. He was able to like really contribute to the church, but he didn't have to deal with day-to-day politics. So I don't know if the thorn in Paul's flesh really was politics and humans, but I think it was more than sickness. And I think John was delivered of that for a season. And in that season where he didn't have to deal with politics and people, isn't that beautiful? Some of you who are leaders understand that. He has the revelation of revelations. And the reason why it's the revelation of revelations should have been Revelation 1, according to our understanding, which is he saw Jesus in his fully glorified form, and he was the first one to see him in his fully glorified form. And the way that the Jewish people were told, if you ever see the face of God, you will not live. And then John, the best friend of Jesus, sees him in his full glory, and he lives. And that should have, according to my understanding, been it, but there was more to it. Jesus invites him to see and prophesy over the whole church, the current church of the world, the 7 churches, and it's a revelation that lasts till now. I mean, it's still like relevant to us right now. And then that wasn't it. There was a voice that came, Revelation 4:1, it's quoted in every charismatic Pentecostal, circle of, come up higher, like we have those like, almost like cattle call for this, come up higher, Have you ever heard that in a prophetic meeting? My son, I say unto thee, it's just this crazy thing that happens. But he came up higher to see something that was even beyond Revelation 1 and 2 and 3. What could be beyond seeing Jesus? What could be beyond seeing what Jesus thinks about the church? And it wasn't about the beast and the Antichrist and the false prophet and all those things. Those were all the things that would take place so that Revelation 19 can come into play, which was the very object of the heart of Jesus for his whole life. And the joy set before him, Hebrews 12, where it says he went to the cross for this joy, The joy set before him was in Revelation 19. John sees the bride. And he doesn't see her, because he's part of her, so he doesn't see her as though she, is in her current state, because she would have been probably tattered and beat up and looked more like Hosea's bride. But he sees her in the fullness of what she could be. He sees her in the fullness of what the Father had original plan for. Like it says in Romans 8, he has an original plan that we delineated from, and the sons of God will bring us back into alignment, which is us, to God's original plan. And he sees her that way, and he's so overcome by what he sees, because this is the object of the book of Revelation, to see Jesus' reward. He's so overcome that he's like looking at the angel like, ah! And the angel goes, write it down. And he goes, no, you do it. I can't do it. It's too hot. She's amazing. And he says, no, don't tell me to do it. You're the one. We share the story of what his desire is. That's what you're supposed to write down. That is the prophetic spirit. That's what prophesies out of the heart of Jesus as her and her completion. And so many times we read Revelation 19:10, it's like the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus. And we think it's just about a gifting. But it's actually about the culture of the heart of Jesus to see each one of us in the full redemption. Now, this changed the way that John saw and viewed the world, and it should change the way we see and view the world, because it doesn't matter if you have that much gifting or not. When God and his love comes on you and you choose to see the world around you in its fullness state, you choose to look at somebody and not treat them as though they are today, because all of us are not where we're going to be. But you choose to treat somebody in their eternal value. This is what Jesus did, where he'd go and sit with people. And I remember the story where he goes in and tells the crowd, my Father's building mansions in heaven for you. Why? They're not saved. They're not walking in his heart or his nature or his understanding, but he's prophesying as though they're her. He's prophesying as though they're fully worth it. He's prophesying as if the delineation line of the fallen nature never happened. And he's saying, you're worthy, you're worth it, and I love you. And they're like, okay, we like big houses. They didn't even understand. He'd look at the disciples and say, you will lead the church one day. Peter, I will build my whole church upon your name. You are the rock and the foundation. And Peter's like, yes, I'm the rock and the foundation. What does that mean? He didn't even understand. But it's because Jesus would call things, even though the person's not qualified in their own nature to do it or their current state to do it, he would call them and upgrade them to their eternal version. And this is the condition of the culture of prophecy that we have to walk in, where we need to start to see people, cities, industries, regions, and nations after God's heart. There's been too much terroristic prophecy. It's not the nature of the culture of God's heart. God's culture and nature, I'm telling you, like you're worried about Las Vegas or LA. Think about Congo, which is the rape capital of the world. God has not destroyed it, and the worst deeds in history are happening there all the time right now. More women have been raped there than in all of Africa put together for 100 years. That's crazy. And God's not destroying it with fire. Why? Because those same warlords, those same rebel soldiers, the same people who are in the bush, the same people who are terrorized by them, they're all called. And God has a plan of redemption. Now, when you look at Korea, we just got back from Korea. Korea's an amazing nation because Korea was completely undeveloped. It was a developing nation, right? So that means it's a third world country, not a first world country. And there was this war. They've been occupied more times than any other nation besides Israel. Isn't that interesting? And so a generation ago, some of your parents' generation, some of you when you were little kids, Korea was a third world nation. And then something happened when the Korean War, happened and America stepped in, that there's a group of Christians who start different kinds of organizations. One of them, which I'll highlight, is Compassion International. How many of you have ever supported a Compassion Kid? So that's how big Compassion International is, because we're from different churches, and yet we all know what it is. Well, it started out there in Korea. A group of people, the founder of Compassion and the people around him, went in and they said, we can change this nation if we educate the kids, but we have to help them come into places where they can be provided for and loved on. Then we have to educate them at the highest levels possible. So we have to get Ivy League education. We can't just do normal education, because we need judges and politicians and business people who are equipped, who can change the nation. So we're going to release this program, which doesn't just do the bare minimum so that they can be servants in hotels, but we're going to do a program where they become the leaders of the nation. So the first crop of Compassion Kids, 17, 18 years after they started the program, because it took a while, even though they were 9 or 10 years old, it took a while for their first crop to come out in Korea, because this was the primary country they were in at the time. The first crop that came out became leaders in the nation. And they had a foundation of gratitude for God because they knew as Christians who were supporting them to change their nation, they had an entitlement to change the nation that was a good entitlement. What happened since then? Korea has become an water agricultural engineering